So yeah, mate, between the two of us, I reckon we've probably got about six good vertebrae. How did you
Yeah.
first hurt your back?
Yeah, so I was when I got out of school, I did a plumbing apprenticeship, and at the time I grew up racing dirt bikes. So I
Hmm.
had a few injuries through that, and I first broke my back when I was about 15. And then it wasn't really that bad, to be honest. It was like my upper back, and it was just like a hairline fracture, so we didn't really think too much of it. And I obviously kept racing and whatever, and I grew up out in the country, so you didn't really go to the doctor or like, kind of look at things too seriously. And you know what it's like when you're 15 or 16, you don't really feel pain that much, and you kind of think you're invincible. So I just kept racing, and then I got into a really physical job. And about 4 years in, I was sort of having a few issues like with my back, like just sort of back pain and whatnot. And then I slipped while carrying a water tank. And it wasn't even really, it was only about 100 kilos, and two of us were carrying it, but it was just the way that it slipped. And because I was an apprentice, I was terrified of, like, well, one, losing my job or damaging something at a brand new house. So I tried to save it. And in
Yeah.
that motion, my legs went one way and my body went the other. Like, as in my legs slipped from underneath me, and I tried to hold onto the tank, and it just twisted my back. And
Uh,
because I'd already had some dramas, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin, if you will. And then that wasn't like, it wasn't terrible. Like, I herniated a couple of discs, and it was sort of like bad enough that I couldn't keep plumbing, but it wasn't like super, super bad, I guess.
hmm.
And then it kind of progressively was getting worse, and I really wanted to get back racing because I'd had like 2 or 3 years off, and that was
Hmm.
before music. That was my my first love or whatever, and I was obsessed with dirt bikes
Hmm.
and all that from a young age. And then I met with a couple of surgeons, and they were sort of like, if we do this surgery, we'll be able to get you back on the bike. And it all sounded great. So that was, 12 years ago. I had an operation, and it sort of did work, to be honest, at first. They put an artificial disc in my back, and so like a metal and plastic disc. So they went through underneath my belly button, cut through, fused the bottom one, and then put an artificial disc in the top. And it worked for I got about 5 years or 6 years out of it. And then it essentially broke inside my back. And then, yeah, that's when all the ordeal started of, they're not designed to come out. They're meant to be permanent fixtures. So,
Hmm.
then that was the whole thing about trying to find someone who was able to help me. And then that, yeah, landed me in Luxembourg, and getting cut open and waking up to people speaking German and French and that whole ordeal.
Wow. So they sent you to Luxembourg all the way to Luxembourg for the surgery.
Yeah, so essentially I went back to my original, because what happened was I started getting, like, I had 5 or 6 like good years. When I say good years, obviously it wasn't perfect, but
Hmm.
like it was well enough to where I could work and function or whatever. And then I started getting weird clicking sensations in my back. And I was like, oh, this kind of feels strange. And then, funny enough, I actually started having a lot of problems with my voice, which sounds
Hmm.
really strange, but
Not at
because I
all.
was
Yeah.
singing in bands at the time and had done for a long time, something was going on where I wasn't really breathing correctly anymore, and it started to strain my voice. And I ended up damaging a vocal cord, which prompted me to go and see what do they call them? Sort of like a speech therapist, but for singing kind of. And
Hmm. Yeah.
I forget what
Vocal
I think it's
coach or
Ian.
something.
Yeah, and they did a scan and stuff, so it was some sort of like, ear, nose, and throat doctor or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
ENT. Yep. Yep. Hmm.
So they did a scan and found that I'd like scarred up some of my vocal cords. So then they sent me to voice rehab, and during that, they were like, okay, like it looks like you're not really breathing correctly. Like we're going to work on a few things. And when they got me to do those exercises, it caused a lot of pain in my back. And they were like, this isn't normal. Like you
Mm.
probably should go and get this checked out. And that's when they found like I had holes inside my spine, like around where the metal was, because it was breaking down inside my body. And
Mm.
then it kind of caused like a reaction to my bones. And then my bones started turning into liquid around the metal. And it was a full on thing. So it started with, oh no, like something's wrong with my voice. Like I need to sort it out. And then that very quickly became, oh no, my spine's being eaten.
Uh,
Which I
it,
didn't really care about my voice at that point too much.
I'm sorry. Are you trying to give me all the best quotes, like in the last 30 seconds? My spine is being eaten. Bones are turning to liquid. Like fucking. I feel like I'm
Yeah, it was
reading
pretty
through
crazy,
bloody
man.
corpse grinder's notebook.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like maybe I'd sung death metal too much and it was becoming real. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult time because it was sort of the hardest part about it is they didn't really know what to do. So it was kind of like, when you break your arm or your leg or whatever, it's like, yep, sweet, it's this 8 weeks, it'll heal, blah blah blah, and you're not really that worried about it. But there was literally like top surgeons in the country being like, we're not going to touch you, man. Like there's a
Hmm.
high probability that you won't make it through the surgery. So I'm like, there was the option of leaving it in there, but then it was like, well, am I just going to keep waiting for my bones to keep like literally kind of dissolving?
Mm.
And then is it going to, like, am I going to end up in a wheelchair or like what's the outcome here? Um, so then I found a specialist in Luxembourg who had removed them before. Because it's very difficult to get them out. And then that's how that whole thing went down. And yeah, we flew to Europe and 100 grand later and stayed in England for 3 months recovering because I couldn't fly, obviously. And then back home and still kind of recovering from it, to be honest.
Yeah. So, what first inspired you to pick up a guitar during your recovery?
I was just not in a good place, man, to be honest. Like I'd lost all my hobbies and all my kind of a lot of my social life, probably much as yourself, revolved around hanging out with mates at shows and jamming and like, having that sort of social circle. So that had kind of like I spent 3 months on my own in England, like just with my partner. Um, and then by the time I got home, I was like I was building a business and things like that, which kept a lot of my, I guess that occupied my brain a lot because, it doesn't matter how injured you are, the bank does not care. So you've got to
Mm.
try and find a way to make money. And, I obviously couldn't go back to my old job and whatever. So yeah, it just sort of started from there. I was working on the business, but you can only do that so many hours a day. And then I was really wanting to get back to doing some type of music. So I started messing around with just playing some riffs from bed, very badly. And then, it kind of felt a little hopeless to begin with, to be honest, because it's pretty hard to play guitar laying down as well. Like it's not a very natural position and it kind of makes it uncomfortable. Like it was good on my back because I obviously wasn't, standing up or whatever, but your shoulders and your elbows and stuff are kind of contorting to try and play, which doesn't feel very natural. But yeah, it was just kind of to occupy my mind, and I really felt like I didn't achieve everything I wanted to achieve with music.
Hmm.
So it was sort of how do I, obviously at first I was hoping that I would heal really fast and get back to doing vocals and you know, but that didn't really happen. So then it was just yeah, go back to the drawing board, figure out another option. Is this
Mm.
even going to work? Like at first I'm like, don't know, but and then I just kept trying, and then once I sort of figured out, I guess, how to record guitars and things like that, I started making demos, and then you know, that was a real pivotal point because I would hear the song back and be like, I've made something. It might be shit right now, but like there's something there that I can kind of work on, you know.
Yeah. So, look, early days, but I mean, is the intent to perform this live in any capacity, or is this just a
A
recorded
hundred,
project?
nah, 100%. Yeah, my main goal is to play it live for sure.
Okay.
Because basically what happened was I was in a couple of bands prior, and one of them was called Splatterpuss. And we started getting some decent traction with that band and playing some good shows. And then it just sort of fizzled, just other members were busy with other bands and stuff like that, and it didn't quite work out. So then we reformed into a new band. And a month before I found out about my back, we got an Australian tour with Acranius and which was my first time touring. Like I'd played
Mm.
shows and whatnot, but I hadn't done an Australian tour. So that was like, the dream list ticked, but then obviously it didn't happen. So yeah, I definitely want to get back on stage for sure.
So,
I just need to figure out how.
pardon me, sorry, I'm not familiar with the original bands. Were they more in the hardcore community, or would you say are in the metal community?
Nah, yeah, more like death metal bands, yeah. So
Okay.
Splatterpuss was had the guitarist from the Red Shore in it and a couple of dudes from I Exalt, which was like an old Adelaide deathcore band.
Hmm.
Um, Funny enough, most of my bands were from Adelaide, even though I'm all the way up here. But we one of my best mates is a drummer down there, and drummers are the hardest members to find. So it always kind of, you know, revolved around him a little bit. So I would fly down there and play shows with him and whatnot. But yeah, definitely the goal to get back on stage. It's just I can play about 20 minutes standing up now.
Hmm.
So I'm close, I think given that we're a new band, we'd be opening for other bands. So, 20, 25 minutes is sort of enough. Um, it's just, yeah, gonna have to get some help carrying gear and that's the beauty of a vocalist. You just have a microphone and that's it, you know.
Mate, you are playing the wrong genre, my friend. Grindcore, it's right there. 20 minutes, you could knock out an entire discography.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the band done forever. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
think
mate.
it's gonna be fun. I think it's one of those bands that'll translate well live because it's pretty like simple and groovy, which I think will help.
Yeah. So what plans oh, sorry, before I get to follow-ups, the cover art is amazing. It looks like something
Mm.
from like Double Dragon or something from Super
Yeah,
Nintendo in the
dude. Just
90s.
yeah,
What
yeah.
was, so yeah, man, what was the concept behind it?
Just yeah, exactly. I wanted something that felt kind of like nostalgic or retro, and I kind of just love that style of art at the moment. I'm a pretty big fan. Like I really love death metal artwork. It's probably, my favorite type of artwork, but I also really like cartoons and was actually one of the things I started doing a fair bit of drawing as well when I was in bed for that, 12 months. So it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. I really love hip hop. So
Hmm.
I feel like, MF Doom and those sorts of guys kind of lent into that 90s cartoon kind of style often. And I thought it would be a cool crossover, a band that's quite heavy and death metal-y, but with kind of more cartoonish artwork and graffiti logos. I thought would be something different. Yeah.
This has been a really cool talk, mate. Drained of Life is absolutely fucking brutal. Have you got any plans to follow it up?
Yeah, I've almost finished a new one. I'm just recording the second guitar at the moment. It's just it's weird as like a 33-year-old man learning and writing guitar because you just don't have the time. Like, when I feel like most people probably learn instruments or the same way when I taught myself to do vocals, I was like 16 and, didn't really have that much to do and not that many responsibilities. Now it's kind of like every day I really want to play guitar, but then it gets to 7 o'clock and I'm like, oh man, like I'm wrecked. Like I need to go and chill for a bit, and probably because of the physical
Pain,
element
yeah.
of what I'm going through. It sort of makes it a bit tricky to. In the past, I would just push through that fatigue and be fine, but I can't really do that now. So trying to find little windows of where I can play. Um, but yeah, definitely, I think probably drums are done, bass is done one guitar track, just finishing the second, and then we'll do the vocals. And I'd say it'll be out in the next, yeah, maybe like mid-May, late May. I'd say we will drop that, and then I've got eight new songs written as well. But I just haven't. They're only demoed at the moment, so I want to follow up with a with an EP. I just sort of wanted to drop the two singles to just kind of introduce the band, and
Mhm.
then it's just hard though because the new songs are a lot better because obviously I've progressed as I've been writing and whatnot. So it kind of feels weird to put them out in a way because I want to put the new ones out, but
Yeah.
I think it's a nice kind of like it's the real trajectory of the band, like Drained of Life was the first song, the next one was the second song written, and then the EP will follow with some of the newer stuff.